finally there's the jackpot day. Going forward, I thought the days would get better and better, but upon further testing I found out I was wrong. Let me explain with another example. To bring you this example, I saved my game with my Switch set to the date of June 16th, 2031. If I play every date from then until June 30th, 2031, I will get nothing but mushrooms and a life-room, and on June 30th, a regular mushroom. But if I skip straight to June 30th, I will get a life-room instead. That is because I was supposed to get at least one life-room before then. So unlike the lottery on the GameCube, if you miss a date that you were supposed to win something, all you need to do is check the board and you will automatically win the highest prize that you were supposed to have won sometime between the last time you checked the board and this time. Thanks to this new system, you will always be able to win on each and every lottery ticket that you get from Lucky. And it means that you would never lose confidence in your ticket, and you would never have to buy a new ticket for 100 coins, even though Lucky still gives you the option. Now, if you were to do the crazy thing and set your Switch's console date far into the future after buying your ticket, this is a surefire way to win jackpot, or at least second prize, the next time you check the board. But keep in mind that unlike the GameCube, the Switch's console date only goes up to 2060. The highest possible date on the Nintendo Switch is December 31st, 2060. It is possible for the Nintendo Switch to go beyond this date, but it would have to do so manually, and all that time would have to pass manually. And why would you do this? Now that I've talked about all the quality of life changes the Happy Lucky Lottery in the Switch version has over that of the GameCube, but there's a few more things about it that I want to mention. In the original, when you lose, Lucky says there are no matches today, which implies that nobody won that day, or any day that you lose. But in the remake, he just says that your ticket lost, which implies that maybe somebody else did win, which makes more sense realistically. I'm glad they fixed this. Another interesting thing about the lottery on the Switch remake, on days when you lose and he gives you a mushroom, he usually says, "Come again tomorrow." In the GameCube version, he will always say this. But sometimes in the Switch version, when a date that you're supposed to win is coming up, he says something else. Sometimes he will tell you that something good will happen soon. He says that his instincts are always winners. Despite this, you could still lose on the following day after he tells you this, but if you do, then he will continue to give this same set of dialogue until you finally hit that winning date, which could be either fourth or third prize if he just says that something good will happen soon. The more excited he gets after he gives you your mushroom, the better your prize is going to be on the winning day sometime in the next few days, or even the next day. If Lucky says he feels a super happy wave of luck approaching, it means you're guaranteed to win at least third prize in the next few days. The idea of Lucky reacting to impending winning days is meant to boost morale and keep players confident in their ticket. It's very good. I like it. Very good quality of life update. Makes the lottery much more tolerable, unlike in the GameCube days. Oh, did you know that in the Switch version, it's actually possible to get away with cheating the Happy Lucky Lottery? I'm not kidding. Let me show you how to do it. After you get the Lucky Day badge or Zest Dynamite from Lucky, you go to your system settings and you set the clock back to the original date. On the Switch, you can do this easily by selecting Synchronize Clock via Internet and turning it on. But you have to do this before Lucky gives you your ticket. You have to do it sometime between when you realize you won and before he gives you your new ticket. If you do it right, after Lucky gives you your new ticket with your new number, he will not have that scribble above his head, and you will have successfully gotten away with cheating the Happy Lucky Lottery. Finally, one more thing that can affect the lottery in both versions of the game is daylight savings time. The GameCube doesn't set this automatically since not every region in the world follows it. However, the Switch does have an option to automatically set the system's clock to the correct date and time, and since the Switch can do this, it means that it can automatically adjust for daylight savings as well, if your region happens to follow it. The actual adjustment for daylight savings happens at 2 a.m. in the morning on the exact calendar day that it's supposed to happen. When adjusting forward, it's never a problem. But what if you're like me and you're a night owl who would actually be playing this game at 1 in the morning? If you saved your game between the exact hour of 1 and 1:59 a.m. on the exact day that daylight savings time is ending, then right as your system's clock sets the time back an hour when it should hit 2 a.m. to hit 1 a.m. again, situation, if the exact time you saved is greater than 1 a.m. on the same date, down to the second, then the lottery will get suspended and you will owe 500 coins even though you technically did nothing wrong. You're not a cheater, but the game thinks you are, just because you're daring enough to play this game so late at night just as daylight savings time is ending. You could avoid this penalty by waiting an hour after the last save, ultimately making sure the game never registers that time moved backwards, by making sure the exact time of the last save is less than the system's current time. But honestly, the very best thing you can really do here in this situation is to just go to bed. You probably shouldn't even be playing the game this late at night anyway, so just go to bed! And then you can pick up the game again in the morning. Honestly, I never thought I'd spend this long talking about a sign in a video game, but that's pretty much the extent of Happy Lucky Lottery in the GameCube and the Switch versions of the game. The Happy Lucky Lottery is much nicer in the remake, and also much easier to cheat, but it still doesn't follow the rules, and we're still expected to wait brief periods of time from buying our ticket before winning the bigger prizes. Thank you again, Strider7X, for your video that talked about the Happy Lucky Lottery in the original game, and thank you, JDAcer64, for helping him with that. It was thanks to both of these guys that I was able to put this video together to cover the same lottery on the Switch. JDAcer64 has done plenty of research on Mario games, and much of the information in some of my videos is thanks to his research. So if you're into that sort of thing, give him a follow. And go check out Strider7X's content too if you're into that. You can find a link to Strider7X's original video in the description, as well as links to my social media and even my Patreon page where I post exclusive content. So if you're into this and more, become a Patreon member. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching. And happy gaming!
What is up, duelists? Welcome back to another Yu-Gi-Oh video. Today I'm showcasing my first deck that I brought to locals after this new ban list. I was very hyped to play the TCG, and I experimented a little bit with a deck that I've been seeing floating around the internet. Primite Fiendsmith, pairing Primite cards with Fiendsmith. There's also a Summon Skull in there. So that was quite fun. Ended up winning locals with it, and hope you enjoyed today's report. Before we hop right in, I want to give a little shout out to my locals relatively new store that opened that last year. So I'm trying to grow the local community. Not a sponsor, but if you live close to Grünbeck in Hessen in Germany, you might want to check out their link in the description down below. Without further ado, if you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Let's get in there. I also played in a tournament this weekend, not a major one, but I did go back to locals after a while, which I was pretty happy to finally do again. And I decided to bring something a little more experimental, something we've actually messed around with in Master Duel last week. And I decided to bring my boy Summon Skull to locals. I am happy to report that my locals has actually gotten a little bit more competitive, I feel like. You know, they started last year, so it's still a relatively fresh locals. But this time I went and it was 4 rounds and my matchups were actually quite solid new format testing. I played against Fiendsmith Malice, I played against Primite Blue Eyes, I played against one of the new Tachyon Galaxy deck, and I played against one Fiendsmith Bestial Tenpai. So actual meta decks for the most part, and I was happy to test against those. It was a lot of fun. I did end up going undefeated with Primite Fiendsmith is the deck that we've also played in Master Duel last week, and I'm going to go through it real quick and explain what's going on here, because I mean, the Summon Skull, you might think it's a meme. I do think the deck is actually quite solid. It's not, I don't know if it's the best deck in the format, probably not, but it was pretty fun to use. We'll talk about it. So for the Primite, you play 2 vanillas, White Duston, which is the only Light Fiend vanilla as far as I'm aware of. I'm pretty sure it's the only one. So you have to play the proudest of them all to go into Fiendsmith with the Primite cards, and I'll show you in a second what exactly the lines there are. There's also a Summon Skull in here, and I will explain why the Summon Skull I feel like needs to be here, because of course having to play 2 vanillas is not ideal, but I'll tell you why I think the Summon Skull kind of needs to be here. And all you have to know up until this point is that it's the biggest level 6 Fiend vanilla. So that's why it's Summon Skull. It's not just Summon Skull because he's cool. He is cool, but there's other reasons for it. So the Primite engine, I decided to go with 3 Primite Ether Barrel, 3 Primite Lordly Load, 2 Drill Beams, and 1 copy of Primite Roar. Now, 2 copies of Drill Beam I think is particularly important in this deck, because this deck focuses very heavily on the grind game. And when you use 1 Drill Beam on the first turn, what happens is you have it in the graveyard, and on the second turn, obviously you're going to try to normal summon your Ether Barrel again, reset the Drill Beam from your graveyard. But if you get to another Lordly Load, you want to be able to search another Drill Beam to immediately activate, which is pretty neat. To be able to get into that loop where you can keep banishing a card on your turn and on their turn. And then Primite Roar is a card that you will not usually see in like the Primite Blue Eyes, for example. So let me explain that one real quick. This is basically unexpected die for Primite, for vanillas as well. Pay 2,000 life points, declare a normal monster card name. If you control no monsters, you can special summon that vanilla from your deck. So this is how the Primite cards can give you access to White Duston and perform Fiendsmith combo. And this is one of the reasons why there's also a Summon Skull in this deck, because Primite Roar has a secondary effect that says if your opponent normal summons a monster, you can banish this card from your grave. Target a normal monster you control or in your graveyard, banish a monster from the field with less attack than that monster. Unfortunately, White Duston is weak, 0 attack. So with Primite Roar, in order to turn Primite Roar into a disruption, you need a vanilla with attack points. And since this deck is very grindy, it is very good if the Primite engine gets you to not only Fiendsmith combo plus a disruption. That's really nice. So like you need something with some attack points to be able to banish their normal summon with Primite Roar. So that is the Primite part of the deck. We'll get into that in a second, how that exactly works. And then of course there's a Fiendsmith package. Only 1 Lacrima because you want to normal summon your Ether Barrel if you can. 2 Fiendsmith Tract and 1 Fiendsmith in Paradise. Very simple. So the idea of this deck basically is that you ideally, in a perfect world, you draw access to both of your engines. as long as you see 2 engine cards, it's fine either way. So I'll show you what you do. Let's say if you just draw the Primite Ether Barrel, how you can go into Fiendsmith. So Ether Barrel will be your normal summon. It'll set a Primite spell trap from your deck, which will be the Lordly Load. You'll activate the Lordly Load, and that will give you the Primite Roar. And that's another reason to play multiple Drill Beams, by the way, is that if you only open Ether Barrel, you don't want to search the Drill Beam here. You want to search the Primate Roar, and that's why drawing the Drill Beam is actually nice. So that way you can like set up both. Like if you draw this is actually good because you have another target. And then because Primate Roar requires you to have no monsters on the field, you actually have to use the Ether Barrel's effect to send a normal monster from your deck to the graveyard. That's another reason why you need another vanilla, because if you don't have the Summon Skull, you have to send the White Dust on here to free up your board. And you'd have to activate this and then chain the Primate Roar, which you could, but then you wouldn't get a vanilla send. So if you do play the Summon Skull, sending it here will give you a disruption later with the Primate Roar. Anyways, this is how you get into the White Dust on, and then you can do Fiendsmith from here. And then if you draw either vanilla, you don't combo. No, that's not true. If you draw the Summon Skull, you go effect of this and then chain Primate Roar. It's fine. And if you draw Ether Barrel plus Dust on, you just normal summon Dust on. Either way, it's fine. Zoa is bigger. Yeah, you need level 6. Summon Skull being level 6 matters for rank 6 play with Engraver. But yeah, obviously, we don't have to go about the Fiendsmith combo. You can do Fiendsmith off of the White Dust on here. And then you have, basically, you have Fiendsmith in rotation, which is a rank 6. It's Fiendsmith in Paradise and its follow-up. You have Primate Roar, which is a banish on their normal summon off of just 1 card, which is pretty. That's like 3 disruptions off of 1 card. And obviously the deck plays a lot of non-engine. If you draw access to your Fiendsmith cards already, like let's say you have an Engraver or you have a track or anything of that nature, you don't have to search the Primate Roar. You can just search Primate Drill Beam and then do your Fiendsmith combo with your Fiendsmith cards and then have a Drill Beam on top of it, which is really nice. Usually, you will make the Drill Beam live by using, at the end of your combo, you use Primate Lordly Load to call either White Dust on or Summon Skull to just have a vanilla out there for Drill Beam to be activatable, basically. So the entire idea of the deck is to just set up Fiendsmith combo and follow-up and Primate interruptions and follow-up. And both of these engines are pretty good at doing that and are pretty good at having very like strong disruptions actually and strong grind game as well. The big downside of this deck is these 3 right here. I feel like that is the one thing that I didn't love about this deck is of course sometimes you're gonna draw these cards. Now depending on individual situations,
I thought I could destroy my own stuff with
fine.
this.
The deck overall has 6 normal summons, so if you draw White Dust on and no other normal summon, it's actually okay. You know, there's been a fair amount of games where I just like normal summon White Dust on and it's been okay. Drawing Fiendsmith in Paradise is basically the same as drawing Fiendsmith in Paradise in any Fiendsmith deck. If you can get to Desiree, it can be quite strong to have access to that card. Otherwise, it's not going to be great. And Summon Skull is the most annoying one to draw by far, because the only purpose of Summon Skull in your hand is essentially being able to activate Drill Beam. You know, like sometimes you draw a Drill Beam and a Summon Skull and you're like, okay, that's actually all right. You know, drawing the Summon Skull here is fine. The main reason why I think it has to be Summon Skull is in some lines, if you get disrupted, let's say you get Bestialed on one of, like, let's say you start with Requiem into Lacrima, into Send Something, into Necroquip, and then you try to bring back your Engraver and it gets Bestialed. You can use the Lordly Load to bring out the Summon Skull, which is a level 6 Fiend, and then you can make a rank 6 with these 2. In some instances, because this deck plays a lot of non-engine and a lot of hand traps as well, sometimes when you do the Fiendsmith combo and you get to this point, you can also technically use the Lordly Load to get the Summon Skull and then make a rank 6 here. That way, you can keep the Necroquip on the board to draw an extra card on your opponent's turn when you use Ash or Effect Veiler or whatever, right? And so like that, sometimes that's neat. The majority of the time, I would make a rank 6 here though, and then I would use the Lordly Load to summon Skull because I wanted my Drill Beam to be live, right? Like, that is the most common setup for this board is something like this. It's like a rank 6, Drill Beam, Summon Skull, and then like Lacrima, Fiends Within Paradise set up in the graveyard. That's like your situation. Which technically, does this deck just always get Nibiru? It is weak to Nibiru if your opponent holds it until the very end. The thing is, like, for the most part, people will Nibiru you before you get to make Caesar. So it's like, it's a very advanced call. If it's like a newer deck in the format, you know, people won't hold them. They won't let you make the Caesar. The rest of the deck is just non-engine, which is basically the plan B if any of it gets interrupted. Even if you do get Nibiru'd on your combo, you know, you still have the Fiends Within Paradise plus your non-engine, which is quite substantial amount of non-engine. This deck can play Dominus Perch, which we were using Dominus Perch in Master Duel actually for TCG because of the, I mean, Fiendsmith is relevant in both formats. I decided to play Bestials and no Dominus Perch, but it's 3 Nib, 3 Veiler, 3 Ash, 3 Ogre, 2 Bell to counter some of the Cycle Readers that are going around, as well as some Bestials. I Belled a Cult by the Grave. I feel like Bell is just like one of the more versatile ones, even though it could be replaced. The list is 41 cards because I didn't feel bad going slightly over 40 because of, you know, the vanillas in the deck. I didn't want to draw all the time, even though, I mean, 41 doesn't make a huge difference. But yeah, I decided for some Bestials, just 4, 3 Imperms, and I still played the 1 Talents because I think Talents is pretty neat in this deck. It's very heavily focused on Fiendsmith. So if your like Requiem gets ashed, that is a fair like weak point of the deck. If you get Fubad on your Fiendsmith combos, typically it's fine. But taking a look at their hand or trying to draw 2 into your Primate cards, which I think that's the biggest strength of this deck in the grind game, is having access to the Primate cards, right? Like the Fiendsmith cards are nice, but everyone is prepared for Fiendsmith, right? Like everyone's prepared for Fiendsmith at this point. You have to anticipate your Fiendsmith stuff getting ashed or Bestialed or whatever, and that's when like the Primate grind game really comes in handy, because Drill Beam is just like such a powerful card, right? Such a powerful card. So having Talents to try and draw, if they interrupt your Fiendsmith, trying to draw into Primate, I feel like was pretty neat. And then just in general, of course, hand trap control with Fiendsmith is a concept that's been out there, so I don't feel like there's much to explain here. All of these were solid. I think Bell is definitely the most niche one out of these. I just felt like I wanted more, but maybe you don't need Bell. But it feels like Bell has applications in pretty much any matchups right now. Even though it is smaller applications, it does have applications. Mainly against Bestials sometimes, even though it's not great against Bestials because they get to keep them in their hand. Extra deck is surprisingly tight, even though some of the cards I played you might not have to play. Requiem, Sequence, Agnum Day. I would love to be able to play 2 Requiem in this kind of deck, but wasn't able to fit it. Moon, SP. SP, one of the reasons why I didn't play Dominus Purge, because I felt like in a grindy deck like this, having access to SP at all times was very important. 2 Desirees, similar reasoning as to why I was using 2 Desirees in Fiendsmith Kashtira back in the day, so that if you summon one, you still have another one for Fiendsmith in Paradise. You could technically cut one because you don't summon it very often actually. Usually you go for a rank 6 instead. Necroquip, Caesar and Lars. I actually found myself going through multiple rank 6s in a game a lot, and so I played both. Both of these also do not work after Dominus Purge because they're water and fire, so that was another reason to not play Dominus Purge. Even without Dominus Purge, I still decided to play the Zeus package with M7 because I think that's a very powerful line to be able to add back a hand trap and then make a Zeus, or just make a 4 material Zeus. Technically, I think the what's the other one called that you can play instead of this one? There's one like some Lancer dude. I just didn't have it. I think that's like technically better than Gaia. It doesn't really matter, but I just didn't have the Lancer rank 7, like Dark Ray Armored Lancer, whatever. There's like 5 cards called like that, but there's one that you can put on top of M7 that also does the same thing, but it's like, I think it's slightly stronger. I'm not sure. Most of the time you just make Zeus on top of it immediately anyways. And then Typhon and Chaos Angel, which are pretty mandatory in most Fiendsmith control decks, or all Fiendsmith control decks. 2 more reasons to not play Dominus Purge. Like, that's the thing. The extra deck is the one where I think Dominus Purge clashes the most in this deck. Like, not being able to make Chaos Angel, Typhon, Caesar, Lars, or SP, and not draw with Necroquip. Because I felt like there were other hand traps to replace the Dominus Purge, I decided against it. But obviously, Dominus Purge is still a really good card. If there was more Ryziel in the format, I would probably go Dominus Purge to have more answers to Dual Drive. But with, like, you know, Fiendsmith and stuff, Bystials are also pretty powerful. The side deck I just threw together, there's not too much thought into the side deck. I played through 3 Molcharmies. I didn't want to main deck these because I felt like I did not want too many bad draws when I'm going first, because this deck does choose first. So, you know, you already have 3 cards that are not great to draw when you're going first. I didn't want it to be 6. So this is just for going second into some more combo heavy decks. 3 Droll and Lockbird, because I was a little scared of some decks that go a little bit too crazy, like Mermail. 3 DD Crows. This should probably have been Cycle Reader for Fiendsmith Mirrors. But once again, I was very scared of decks like Mermail. I think Mermail is still pretty good, and at least DD Crow can be sided against Mermail, while Ally of Justice Cycle Reader cannot. So, you know, they sent like Dragoons for cost, and you just crow it, and then you hope that's enough. Or like Shadow Squad or whatever they go for with their first thingy. That's why it's not more Bystials or Cycle Reader, is because I wanted this. It also covers decks like Fire King. I do think DD Crow is a very strong card at the moment, because it has coverage against Fiendsmith decks, and it has coverage against the decks that are trying to play around Fiendsmith. Like, a genuine reason to play decks like Fire King or Mermail at the moment is because of how popular Bystials are. And so DD Crow kind of catches those decks. And then I wanted Solemns for going first to just replace whichever I thought the weakest non-engine in the matchup was. Like, if I'm going first and I think like, oh, Bell or Ghost Ogre or Nibiru or Bystials are not that good in a matchup, I wanted cards that I can always side going first, basically. And that was Solemn's for me. So nothing too fancy with the side deck here, no crazy tech cards or anything like that, but it did its job. It was fine. Yeah, matchup, I beat Tachyon in round 1, I had Nibiru game 1, and then they played into a Fuva game 2, which gave me enough cards to break their board. I beat, yeah, I mean, would recommend. Fun deck, I think. I was like, my end board was like Caesar, Drill Beam, Roar in the Graveyard, Paradise setup, and like 2 hand traps or something. They just couldn't break it, and then game 3 I had the right hand traps for it. Which, funnily enough, I think I would have lost game 3 if Link Decoder still existed, because the only reason they couldn't play through my hand traps was because they didn't have a free body at some point. That definitely felt relevant in that game. And then for the last round, I played against the Tenpai, the version, the Fiendsmith Bystial Tenpai deck, which was pretty close. It felt pretty close to a mirror match, because they're trying to do the same thing, right? They're trying to do the same thing where it's just Bystial and Fiendsmith control, but I think my secondary engine was just better in the grind game, right? Like, my Drill Beam grind game was just better than Tenpai grind game. How do you use Roar against Malice? Just take out the once per turn? I mean, because Roar can only trigger on a normal summon, right? You don't really have much of a choice for it. You just have to use it on when they normal summon. So yeah, you do take out the normal summon. Like, they went like normal summon Dormouse, I banished it with Roar. They brought it back, but then when you banish it again, they can't bring it back. I think I even Drill Beamed it after. It was basically, I traded my Primite cards for their Malice normal summon. Roar from Grave, banish the Dormouse, it comes back, activates effect, I go Drill Beam, it's banished forever. I think that's what I did. And then they had to play the rest of the turn with only 2 Malice names, and the body was also gone, which was pretty good. So, yeah. So that's the deck. Very fun concept. Actually, solid going second because of all the hand traps. The setup going first is not bad. Has pretty strong grind game. I enjoyed it. Only downside, once again, is sometimes you have to deal with drawing these cards, which depending on the hand can be quite awkward. Other than that, I enjoyed it a lot. Had a great time back at locals. And, yeah, I mean, would recommend. Fun deck, I think. The even bigger news, though, from this announcement was that we now have official announcements of Mitsurugi Wave 2. And this one is a highly anticipated one because Mitsurugi is already arguably very, very, very close to a top-tier Yu-Gi-Oh deck with just the first wave. It's arguably one of the most successful TCG exclusives in a long, long time. And the second wave here, I will say I have tried to avoid spoilers because I knew I couldn't really talk about it on stream, so I've tried to not get spoiled on these. So I'm going to be reacting to these almost blind. I've seen bits here and there, but like, let's go in it and look at it like in detail. We have got a new main deck monster. I'm gonna spare you with the Mitsurugi no thingy every time. Aramasa here, level 4 Dark Reptile. If this card is normal or special summoned, or if this card is tributed, you can add a Mitsurugi monster from your deck to your hand, except Aramasa, and then it has the same secondary effect. If another reptile would be destroyed, you contribute this card instead. That's a good start. That's a good start, I will say, because Mitsurugi, like, that's the one thing. If you want Mitsurugi to be good, what you want from this secondary wave is consistency. Consistency, because that's what Mitsurugi's missing. Mitsurugi is a ritual deck that consists of like multiple card combos that are already incredibly powerful, even without this support. All you need is more consistent ways to get there, and maybe more, just more starters, basically. More ways to open your 2 to 3 card combos. Even some of this is even 1 card combo worthy, I think. But yeah, that's what they want, right? They just want more engine pieces. They don't need better end board stuff. The Mitsurugi end board is already very layered and very strong. And this is exactly this, right? This is just another great normal summon that gives you some consistency because it helps you search whatever piece you're missing. This can search ritual, the ritual monsters if you're missing those. So very, very nice. Mitsurugi no Miko Wosu. Okay. Level 8 Dark Reptile, 2k, 2k. Special summon this card from your hand by tributing 1 other reptile monster from your hand and 1 monster your opponent controls. But you cannot special summon nor activate monster effects for the rest of this turn except reptiles. Ooh. Okay. This does not start a chain. This does not start a chain. And oh, that's like a side deck card, I think. I don't feel like you main deck. Let me read the rest of it. You can only special summon it once per turn this way. If this card's tributed, you can discard a card, and if you do, add this card back to your hand. You can only use this effect once per turn. Okay. Yeah. This is a solid side deck card. I don't think you're gonna main deck this ever because it does literally nothing when you're going first. Whether you're gonna side deck this or not depends on the format, whether it's good or not, but this would have been a really good answer to something like a Ryziel Detonator. I don't know how relevant that's gonna be, because currently Ryziel is not super popular anymore, but like this outs a Detonator through Ryziel Cross. Maybe that's what they had in mind when they designed this card a while ago, right? Because you just like tribute one, and it's also an extender at the same time, because if most of your reptiles, if you tribute them, will get you a benefit, right? So it's a strong card if there's enough other Mitsurugi cards and if there's a use case for it in the format. Like, it gets around Omni Negates, it gets around even some of the most powerful cards that are banned in the TCG. If the OCG eventually gets this gets around Appaloosa and all that stuff. That's a very powerful, it's basically a kaiju that summons itself on your side of the field, which is pretty good. Yeah, not a bad card at all. Also, so far, I'm noticing on this one as well, none of this has even gold lettering, so none of this is ultra rare or higher. They're all common or super rare. We have a new ritual monster, which is Habakiri, level 8 Dark Reptile. You can ritual summon this card with Mitsurugi Ritual. Monsters your opponent controls lose 800 attack. You can reveal this card in your hand, special summon a Mitsurugi monster from your deck, then tribute a monster you control. Oh, that okay. You can reveal this card in your hand, special a Mitsurugi from your deck, then tribute a monster you control is insane. That's crazy. Because that's just that's whatever you want, right? That's just a +1. That's just a +1 and search whatever you want, right? Because with this one, you add a monster, but with the other one, the one from the previous set, you can get any spell, right? So this one is just a +1 to get any spell or monster. That's busted. You can only use this effect, okay, once per duel. All right, sure. That is definitely fair for this card, that you can't do this multiple times in a game. Still, I don't think that matters that much. I mean, of course, we all know in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! The first turn is the best, like the most important turn. So like, it's good that you can't do this for the entire game. It definitely hurts the deck's follow-up a little bit, but that's very, very strong. If this card is tributed, you can add a Mitsurugi card from your deck to your hand, then you can special summon this card. And it's that. Okay, so you reveal it in your hand, you basically tutor whatever you want, and then later on, you tribute it to get another ad. This card's perfect. This card is perfect. This is everything Mitsurugi could have asked for. This makes this one even more broken, because this makes it so this one basically bridges into everything. If you need a monster, this one searches a monster. If you need a spell, this one searches this one, and that one can get you to the spell. Nah, these cards are absurd. That's absurd. New ritual spell. Okay. This card can be used to ritual summon any reptile ritual monster from hand or graveyard. You must also tribute reptiles from hand or field whose total level equals or exceed the level of the ritual monster. If Ame, Futsu, or Habakiri you control is tributed, while this card's in your grave, you can shuffle this card into the deck. Okay. This seems... Wait. Oh god, dude. I was about to say that's just a solid card, nothing too crazy. But it mentions all of the rituals. You can play pre-prep. You can pre-prep for this. Nah. Jesus. And you never run out of targets for pre-prep, right? You basically have to only run one because it always puts itself back into the deck. You always have a target for pre-prep. You can pre-prep for days. It also chain blocks the graveyard effects. Yeah, you tribute it and you go like chain link 1 graveyard effect to search and summon back, and then chain link 2 mirror to go to the back into the deck. Okay. Dude, and we're only 4 cards in. What is pre-prep? Pre-prep Yu-Gi-Oh! Hold up. Pre-preparation of rites is a generic ritual support card. I'll show you in a second, just for context. Let me just load the side. Oh, they changed the look of this page. Pre-prep is a spell card that says add a ritual spell from your deck to your hand, and then you can add a ritual monster from your deck or graveyard to your hand whose name is mentioned on the ritual spell. So this is a very good card, of course, because it searches 2 cards, but it only works if the ritual monster is mentioned on the ritual spell. That's why in a lot of ritual decks you cannot play this card, because a lot of the ritual spells just don't mention the monsters anymore, right? So this is why it's such a big deal, because for example the previous Mitsurugi ritual card, the original Mitsurugi ritual, just doesn't mention the Mitsurugi monsters by name. It just says ritual summon any Mitsurugi ritual or something, and that's not the same. They're not specifically mentioned on the card. And that's a big deal with this card. You can search any ritual monster you want plus a ritual spell with pre-prep now. That's massive for consistency. So the deck alone, already off of the first 4 cards, already gets a new normal summon that searches monsters, a broken ritual monster that's a consistency card, and the ability to play 3 pre-preps. Dude. And we're not done. Mitsurugi Magatama, quick play spell card. During the main phase, activate one of these effects. Tribute a reptile monster, then target a face-up card your opponent controls, destroy it. Okay, plain and simple, I like it. Ritual summon 1 Mitsurugi ritual from your hand by tributing monsters you control whose total level equal or exceed this level. Okay, so this is the worst card we've read so far, besides the side deck only card. It's just a solid card. I don't think you're gonna play more than 1 copy of this ever. Ritual summoning on your opponent turn is a good ability for this deck because the ultra rare from the previous set is like a Raigeki on the opponent's turn. So, but the thing is, the deck can already summon that out on the opponent's turn, no problem, right? Like I don't think you're gonna really need this card, but it's not bad. It's cool because it's a generic out to like floodgates or any sort of situation. It dodges effect veiler and stuff if you're going second. Let's say you normal summon something and they imperm it. You're like, all right, tribute it, pop a card, get my search through. It's not bad. It might be a one-off because it's highly searchable as to be a part of your end board. I don't really see myself putting 3 of this in the deck, but we'll see. We'll see. Mitsurugi Sacred Boundary. Continuous spell card. Your opponent cannot target Mitsurugi rituals you control with effects of monsters that were specialed from the extra deck. You can target 4 Mitsurugi cards in your grave, except Sacred Boundary, shovel them into the deck, then, if your opponent controls a monster, make them tribute a monster they control, their choice. You can only use each effect once per turn. Okay, this feels like the worst one so far, by far. This card has no purpose other than recycling, which I don't think this deck is gonna need. So I don't feel like we should waste too much time talking about this card. The card is only useful for recycling purposes, and I don't think this deck is really gonna struggle with that. Sure. Mitsurugi Tempest, normal trap card. If you have a Mitsurugi ritual spell in your grave, tribute 3 monsters whose original names are Murakamo, Mitama, and Habakiri. Make your opponent banish exactly 8 cards from hand, extra deck, field, and or graveyard. You can only activate 1 Tempest per turn. This is a gimmick. You're not gonna play that. This is Giga Winmore. This is Giga Winmore. Yeah, this is a meme card. This is a meme card. Rollback target. But you can only... The thing about rollback is it doesn't even work the way you think it works, because you still have to fulfill the condition. Like, with rollback, it only makes you not have to pay the cost, but you still have to do... You still have to fulfill the activation condition. So you can roll back this, but you still need a ritual spell in your grave. Anyways, you know, it's not relevant. You are not gonna play this card. The Mitsurugi setup is already very, very strong, and you don't need a gimmick like this one. They have an Omni Negate trap. They have this card now. They have the other quick play spell card. There's like so many cards you can access with this deck that make you win the game. Like your setup is already so solid that I don't think this is ever going to be an option. And also, even then, like your opponent just banishing 8 cards from their extra deck is sometimes not even that big of a problem to them, depending on what their setup is. But yeah, you have to have all 3 of them. And yeah, no, it's gimmick. We don't have to spend time with it. Okay, the last 2 were kind of stinkers. The Tempest and the Boundary, not really playable, I don't think. The first 5 though, this is a crazy wave, dude. This is a crazy secondary wave. I mean, okay, this one is side deck only, I think, if even, but it's not a bad option, to be honest, depending on the format. I could see people playing this card in the side deck. It's kind of crazy. that like you make your board, they start their turn, distribute one of your things and get going. This card's insane, absurd. This card is very solid. This card has crazy implications because of pre-preparation. And this card's decent. But overall, this basically, this wave does exactly what I said earlier, right? Nothing here contributes to a much crazier end board, right? Like there's not much here that like, oh, now you have like 15 Omni Negates or something, but the deck didn't need that. The deck needed consistency. Consistency card, that's also crazy. This lets you play pre-prep, so that's basically a consistency card. This is a dream for Mitsurugi, basically. This is like 9 more broken starters to the deck now. So you just like get there every time now. I feel like the only weakness that's left for this deck is like Golden Lockbird, because Dweller is gone. Yeah, no, this is good. This is going to be a force to be reckoned with going into national season for sure. Mitsurugi is going to shake up things significantly. I'm pretty certain about it. Like these are very strong cards.
I guess we're back at that point where that's the only way I can tell this, huh?
Why is it like this?
Hop on the beat! Back in 2019, I started my series in which I cleared up a large amount of misinformation in the JoJo series. I went through the first 7 parts, along with some additional videos covering certain large topics of the series. However, there have been a lot of topics that I either neglected to cover, or that have only started to be discussed more recently, which are too small to get their own video. Other topics I want to cover are ones that I already went over, but with which I was apparently not thorough enough. Due to the nature of the series, making the video results in people commenting, which brings in a ton of new ideas. I did predict this, however, and tried my best to survey the waters a bit by asking the audience ahead of time for topics. But there are still some that ended up slipping through the cracks. So today I'll be covering the Araki Forgot topics that I missed along the way. One of the biggest ones I've seen recently, and possibly the most insane Araki Forgot topic I've ever seen, goes as follows. In one of my videos, I happened to mention the fact that the baby saved on board the boat at the end of part 1 is Lisa Lisa. Anyone with even a basic understanding of the story would know this, since Lisa Lisa directly explains this in part 2. However, in the comments of that video, I received a ton of comments saying, but if Lisa Lisa was the baby, and she's the mother of Joseph, then that would mean Joseph and all of his descendants aren't actually related to Jonathan, and therefore shouldn't have Joestar birthmarks. This has to be one of the most insane things I've ever heard on multiple levels. These people somehow seem to forget the existence of George Joestar II, whose backstory was extensively shown in part 2, and is one of the most integral characters to the backstories of Joseph and Lisa Lisa. And the fact that Erina was already pregnant with him at the end of part 1, which couldn't have been made any clearer by the narration from the end of that part. Just as confusing is when I get comments that think they're correcting me, telling me that the baby was actually George II. I presume they think that Lisa Lisa was actually Erina's baby? Once again, this was directly conflicted with by what was clearly stated in part 2. How an amount of misinformation like this can even be possible says a lot about the reading level that some JoJo fans possess. I've received some questions regarding the sand copy of Dio that Iggy made in part 3. In my part 3 video, I said that Iggy based his sand copy off of the photo of Dio. I received comments asking how Iggy was able to replicate the pants when the photo is only from the waist up. Now this doesn't exactly make sense, since not only are the pants visible in the spirit photograph of Dio, but if you look at the manga, you can see that the pants Dio was wearing as a sand copy is different from the pants he was wearing earlier, so they were never replicated perfectly in the first place. Others have even asked me how Iggy was able to replicate Dio's face. But as you can clearly see, Iggy did not replicate Dio's face, and it is obscured with shadow. The end of part 3 famously shows Jotaro using his stand to stop time, since it is the same kind of stand as the world. Many people are confused by this, asking, how's this possible? I've been over this topic before, but I think it's worth going further in depth. Star Platinum and the world are far from the only similar stands out there. Hermit Purple is nearly identical to the stand of Jonathan's body which Dio used. The Darby brothers both have nearly identical functioning stands, with the younger Darby having an additional mind-reading ability. The rats in part 4 both had identical stands, and in part 7, the Boom Boom family had 3 stands with the same ability. Jotaro and Dio had a similar stand due to their psychic link through Jonathan's body. However, some people chose to say their own explanation as to why the stands were similar, citing an example from earlier in the part. I've gotten a lot of comments saying that when Jotaro drew the tarot cards to name his stand in the beginning, he first drew the World card. Avdol said it was already taken, and then he drew the Star card. Now, I was confused as to how I got so many comments saying the same very specific scenario, since no such scene exists in Part 3 or any of its adaptations. I finally ended up tracking this down to a YouTube video which does this edit as a joke. Not only does the description of the video clearly state that it's an edit, but the edit within the video is incredibly obvious. The video jumps to a shot of Dio from dozens of episodes later, and has Avdol comically saying, "Oh shit," in a completely different font. But somehow, JoJo fans are dense enough to watch this and literally think it's a scene from the show. Although it probably shouldn't come as a surprise that a lot of self-identified JoJo fans out there probably only watch the show through clips on YouTube. The most embarrassing thing about this particular one is that it comes from people on the anti-forgetting side of the argument. They're just spreading around stuff that's
not how that works.
wrong. I'd prefer if people said nothing rather than muddy the waters like this, even if they're on my side. Another big topic comes from the end of Part 3, when Holly is cured of her disease. People often ask why defeating Dio caused her stand to disappear, and not the stands of the other Joestars. In reality though, Holly's stand didn't just cease to exist, rather it returned to a dormant state. When Dio used the stand arrow on Jonathan's body, it sent out a kind of distress signal to the other Joestars through their psychic link. This caused stands to start to awaken in Jonathan's descendants. The stands didn't just appear right away, however. They gradually started forming over the course of about a year. For Jotaro, he started to notice the effects of his stand, but didn't fully gain control of it until the fight in the police station. For Holly, her stand was dormant for a while before fully appearing. At the beginning of the part, she is clearly already a stand user, since she is able to see Star Platinum. However, her stand is not fully formed yet. Eventually, her stand was forced out before she was ready, since it was reacting to the signal from Jonathan. Jotaro was strong enough to use the stand once it appeared, so he had no issues. But this same effect on Holly caused her to fall ill. After Dio was beaten and the distress signal ended, her stand had no need to be out anymore, and returned to how it was at the beginning of the part. Josuke was also affected by the same disease as Holly, and as we know, he later was able to use the stand perfectly fine. We don't know exactly when Josuke started using Crazy Diamond, we just know that it started sometime when he was a kid. Either his stand became dormant and he awakened it at a later date, or he was inspired enough by his savior to be able to use his stand normally.
They're out of pops.
Keep in mind that even with a dormant stand, the ability can still be used. We can see that effect through Giorno, who would have also been affected by the disease. As a young child, his stand was dormant but still usable. It didn't fully awaken until he was 15, shortly before Part 5. Jotaro and Joseph were already able to use their stands, so they remained as they were. Holly's stand didn't disappear, it just returned to what she was capable of using at that time. Stands completely disappearing was never part of the equation. One weird string of comments I've gotten came from my Part 4 differences video. In it, I point out the new addition of the other Morio stand users hidden in a crowd shot. These were Okuyasu, Keicho, Yukiko, Hazamada, and Rohan. For some reason, however, I got at least 30 comments saying they spotted Polnareff in the crowd, despite the fact that it's clearly Keicho, and that they're watching a video which is telling them that the people in the crowd are future stand users from Part 4, and that all of the other people there are clearly from Part 4, and the fact that Polnareff isn't even in Part 4, and it would make no sense for him to be foreshadowed there. Another common topic in Part 4 involves the Nijimura brothers' father. Keicho Nijimura was searching for a stand user to kill his father out of pity. I've gotten a ton of questions asking me why Okuyasu didn't just kill him instead. With his stand in the hand, which can erase matter, killing the father would presumably be an easy job. First of all, Okuyasu has never shown a desire to kill his father. And second, Okuyasu himself has said that he has no idea where things erased by the hand go. For all he knows, the things he erases may just be appearing in another dimension. where the father would just regenerate and continue suffering. Others ask why Joseph's Haman wasn't used to kill the father. Since he was mutated by the flesh bud and combined with Dio's cells, some think that Haman may be capable of killing him. First of all, I think it was made clear that that aspect of Dio's vampiric cells was eliminated when it combined with the father's, since he walks in sunlight without any issue. So I doubt the Haman would have any effect on him like it would on a vampire. Second, by the time Joseph arrived at Morio, they were long past trying to kill the father and wanted to find a cure instead. I've gotten a few comments asking me how Hayato was able to see Killer Queen during the final battle. This is an easy one, since the answer to this is that he was never seeing Killer Queen. Hayato himself states that he is unable to see what's going on, but that he's predicting Kira's general actions from his expression. In the spin-off series, The Spoke to Shibe Rohan, we can see various instances of modern technology, such as tablets or smartphones. Many have asked how this is possible, since Part 4 takes place in 1999. This is cleared up by the fact that we are shown Rohan's age, which is now 27, putting these chapters several years after Part 4. The exception to this would be the first chapter, At a Confessional, which is said to take place during Rohan's hiatus during and shortly after Part 4. This was expanded upon in the OVA adaptation, which included a scene of Koichi talking about his upcoming trip to Italy, placing this story somewhere around the year 2000. Speaking of OVAs, here's a gripe I have with how I've seen many JoJo fans use the term. OVA stands for Original Video Animation. The term refers to an anime that is released straight to video or DVD, as opposed to being broadcast on TV or shown in theaters. However, people seem to use the term OVA interchangeably with any supplementary or spin-off material. For example, I've seen the JoJo spin-off manga Dead Man's Questions referred to as an OVA, despite the fact that it is not animated. I've also seen the Rohan TV drama referred to as an OVA, despite the fact that not only is it not animated, but it was also broadcast on TV. The only OVAs we've had so far in JoJo is the recent Rohan OVA animated by David Production, and the old Stardust Crusaders OVAs from 1993 and 2000. In Part 5, we were shown that after Polnareff attempted to go after Diavolo, he was gravely injured by him and went into hiding. I've seen a ton of comments asking why Polnareff did not contact Jotaro or the Speedwagon Foundation during this time. This is despite the narration of the manga saying that he was unable to contact Jotaro, due to Passione having control over all communication in and out of Italy. All of his attempts to reach outside the country were blocked, and any attempt now that he's in hiding would lead to his cover being blown. So he stayed in hiding until he found people within the country capable of defeating Diavolo. For a similar topic, many have asked why Koichi didn't tell Jotaro about Giorno near the beginning of the part. Jotaro had sent Koichi there to investigate Giorno, and to retrieve a skin sample from him to determine if he is a descendant of Dio. Koichi never ended up getting that sample. This was explained within the story itself. After Jotaro was made aware that Giorno was a stand user, he immediately told Koichi to stay away from him. After hearing about Giorno's ability and his recent change to blonde hair, Jotaro became certain that this was Dio's son, and no longer needed Koichi to collect a sample. After Koichi learned about the presence of a stand arrow in Italy, he tried to contact Jotaro, but was convinced not to by Giorno, who knew Passione would likely go after Koichi. So, for the same reason as Polnareff, Koichi refrained from contacting Jotaro right away, and most likely told him after he was safely back home. By that time, the story of Part 5 would have already been resolved, since it only takes place over the course of about a week. During the Grateful Dead fight, the characters slowly begin to age due to Prosciutto's ability. The ability works based on body heat, with those who are warmer aging faster. Since Trish is a woman, her body heat is naturally lower compared to the others, which Prosciutto tried to use to his advantage to avoid killing her. Some people ask why Trish was not affected much by the aging, while another woman on the train was shown to have aged more. First of all, this woman was clearly shown to be older than Trish since she was a mother. Second, Trish had access to the ice cubes in the fridge, which further slowed down her aging. Also, Grateful Dead's aging ability seemingly spreads through the mist that is emitted throughout the area during his attack. The woman passenger would have been exposed to this mist much earlier than Trish was, since she was sitting out in the open, as opposed to being hidden like the gang was. I've seen others ask why the characters didn't open the fridge to stay cold. These people don't seem to know how a fridge works. A fridge doesn't just pump out cold air, it cools by absorbing the heat from inside the fridge. If you just leave the door to a fridge open, it would be cold for a little bit, but since the door is open, it's no longer able to remove the heat. Eventually, the fridge would just start heating up the room, since it's just sitting there running electricity. I've also got a comment asking why they didn't put the others inside the fridge, despite the fridge being downright tiny. Also in Part 5, the stand talking head took control of Narancia, causing him to unintentionally tell nothing but lies to the other characters. Some ask why Narancia didn't just say the opposite of what he meant, so that what he said would be different. This is not how the stand works. Talking head doesn't reverse what you say, it makes you lie. Lying on purpose is still lying. So if Narancia lied, it would still come out as a lie. Another fight in Part 5 involved the characters entering the mirror world of Luso's stand, Man in the Mirror. According to Aluso, the only living things that can enter the mirror world have to be brought in by the stand itself. Some people have said this is wrong, since we see the crows on the ground after they were affected by Fugo's virus. These people somehow didn't understand that these crows were clearly said to be dead from the virus, which is the reason they appeared. The second they stopped living, they were no longer considered living, so they appear in the mirror world. Near the end of Part 5, Polnareff tells the group about his experience with the arrow, and through flashback we see it on the wall in his house where he was in hiding. Some people were confused by this, and asked how the beetle arrow, which in Part 6 Dio was shown to have owned previously, ended up in this random house to be found by Polnareff. I have no idea how anyone could think something this ridiculous, when Polnareff clearly states that he found this arrow in Egypt, and brought it with him to Italy. Another one from Part 5. In my Part 5 Differences video, I mentioned how the anime removed the scene of Koichi using Echo's Act 1 to look for Giorno. I got a lot of comments asking how it's possible for him to suddenly use a previous act. However, this has never been a problem for Koichi, since using previous acts of a stand is completely normal. He is shown using Act 1 after he had already gotten Act 2 multiple times in Part 4, such as during the Red Hot Chili Pepper fight and in the Ghost Alleyway. The only other stand to have acts is Tusk in Part 7, and Johnny is shown to be using previous acts all the time. In Part 6, Jotaro sends Jolene a fragment of a stand arrow inside of a pendant in order to awaken her stand in the prison. The pendant also includes a transmitter intended to be used in Jolene's rescue. There seems to be some confusion when it comes to this pendant, with some people claiming it was never seen again after a certain point, and that the plot point surrounding it was dropped. This is blatantly untrue, and the path the pendant took is actually quite clear. It started with Jolene receiving the pendant in the visitation room. After she was pierced by the arrow inside, she threw it into the drain. Later, we are shown that Hermes found the pendant, and was also pierced by the arrow. This is who we saw carrying it at the end of the 3rd chapter. Then, she sold it to Gwess, who also got her stand from it. After the fight with Goo Goo Dolls, Gwess gave the pendant back to Jolene. Later, when Jolene met with Jotaro, she threw the pendant back at him. Later, he gives it back to her, and it is last seen being dropped into Jotaro's pocket. So it was taken to the Speedwagon Foundation when they took Jotaro's body. Another one I've seen from Part 6 was people claiming Jolene was capable of seeing the future at the beginning of the part, and that this was never used again. It took me a while to realize what the hell they were talking about, but it seems they're referring to Jolene unconsciously using her ability to hear through her string. This starts in the 1st chapter, when Jolene is in the prison van with Hermes. Her string hears the driver in the front cabin say when they'll be arriving. He later repeats this to the back, confirming what she heard earlier. This happened again when Hermes was being accosted by the guards, when it is revealed to be happening through her string. She continues to use this power of her string throughout the part, such as when she hears Emporio through it later. So no, at no point was Jolene predicting the future. One comment I featured way back in my Part 6 video had someone asking why Emporio had the Joestar birthmark. Obviously, this comment is completely ridiculous, since no such thing ever happens in the story of Part 6. I believe the comment may have been referring to Weather getting the birthmark, and since I already ended up explaining that in the video, I left the comment in the intro segment. However, this somehow caused multiple commenters to come out who did believe Emporio had a birthmark. I'm absolutely dumbfounded as to how this is even possible. It's like they gaslighted themselves into believing that this actually happened, and then started to make explanations for it in the comments. This must say something about how JoJo fans retain information. Like with that previous YouTube clip I spoke about, it shows the extent to which some people's understanding of JoJo comes from what people say about it online, or from random YouTube clips, rather than what it should come from, which is reading the actual series itself. A common topic I've seen across all parts has related to stands interacting with physical objects. Many people point to examples of stands being affected by non-stand attacks, and say this is contradictory. I'd like to finally just lay this entire topic to rest. Stands exist on a spectrum of tangibility. Stands have been shown to lose their opacity to enter a ghost-like state, and phase in and out of objects. At other times, however, a stand needs to attack, and so they become more solid. Let's say a stand wants to break through a wall. If the stand is strong, like Star Platinum for instance, its punch would destroy the wall. But let's consider a stand that's too weak to break through. Obviously, since the wall is tougher, the stand would be stopped by the wall, at least when it's in its solid form. Now, let's look at this process in reverse. If an object is flying towards a stand user, and they use the stand to defend themselves, they obviously would not be making their stand intangible. They'd want to make their stand as solid as they can to block the hit. So just like how if a stand hits a physical object, it gets damaged, these interactions can take place in the opposite direction as well. So yes, stands can be damaged by physical objects, but only if they are taking their solid form. Some people are also confused when it comes to the visibility of stands. I've gotten tons of comments asking about scenarios such as Anne and the sailors seeing strength despite it being a stand. Others say that since Love Deluxe is a stand, people shouldn't be able to see Yukiko's hair. This comes from a clear misunderstanding of stand categories. The traditional idea of a stand is a ghostly type, something like Star Platinum, which appears and disappears at will. These types of stands cannot be seen by non-stand users. However, plenty of other stands are a completely different type, which are bound stands. These are stands which are bound to a physical object, and can be seen by everyone, including non-stand users. Strength and Wheel of Fortune were both shown to be bound to a physical boat and car, respectively. Anubis is bound to a sword, Toph is bound to a book, Superfly is bound to a transmission tower, and so on. In a series with a huge number of stands that either exist within physical objects or are made up of physical matter, I have no idea how anyone can still be confused when non-stand users see them. There's literally so many of these stands that it would take way too long to list them out in this video. In Part 7, there's been some confusion involving Hot Pants stand, Cream Starter. Cream Starter takes the form of a spray bottle which can spray flesh. She also has the ability to absorb flesh to refill the spray. People have claimed that she was only shown absorbing flesh at the beginning of the part, and that later on, this restriction was removed. In my Part 7 video, I showed that this is not the case, since she can be seen absorbing flesh even in the final arc. However, some were not satisfied by this, and now they claim that she needs to absorb flesh every single time she uses her stand. I have no idea how anyone could think something like this, which is so obviously not true. Apparently, they think her stand ability is literally a one-way transfer of flesh from one source to another with no time in between. Something like that almost reminds me of one of the Aphex Twins abilities in Part 8. This is simply not how Cream Starter works. Even back in her very first appearance, she is immediately shown spraying flesh without having been shown absorbing it. Creamstarter obviously stores the flesh inside of it for when it needs to be used. If she's low on flesh, she absorbs some more. If she already has flesh stored, why would she be absorbing it? It's like if these people saw a scene where Mista was out of ammo and needed to reload his gun to shoot, and then, in a later completely unrelated scene when he already has ammo, he shoots his gun. These people would then say, wait, what happened to Mista needing to reload his gun every time he shoots, when he clearly just got more ammo off screen and had his gun already fully loaded? This same basic concept obviously applies to Creamstarter. In the scenes in which Hot Pants is shown using her spray, she obviously already has ammo stored up. Still in Part 7, here's a topic I apparently didn't give enough of a detailed explanation to. When the alternate universe Diego uses the world to stop time, you can see that his horse is in a different location after the time stop. People were confused by this and asked me why Diego's horse is capable of moving in stop time. I explained this quite plainly in my Part 7 video, by saying that during the time stop, Diego moved his frozen horse to a different location to continue riding, much like how Polnareff was repeatedly moved down the stairs in Part 3. For some reason, this was not a good enough explanation, and I was berated by dozens of commenters telling me that it was ridiculous to say that Diego would be capable of moving his horse. They say that Dio would be easily capable of something like this with his strength as a vampire, but that it is ridiculous to say that Diego could move the horse, since he is a normal human. These people somehow seem to forget about the fact that Dio has access to the world, one of the physically strongest stands in the series, with a stand of comparable strength being able to bend steel bars with ease. The world would be able to reposition the horse without any issue, and Diego wouldn't even have to move a muscle. And that's without even mentioning that objects within stopped time don't even have weight to begin with. People and objects are repeatedly shown floating in place in stop time, and are able to be pushed around with no difficulty at all. So to take it even farther, Diego didn't even need to use the world in this circumstance. He probably did, since that would be faster to fit within the time stop, but still. I really have no clue how anyone could not understand such a simple concept. However, I've gotten some more comments about this topic, which somehow take the insane approach of saying that Diego's horse actually is able to be ridden in stop time, since Diego is making contact with it. For starters, we see other panels where the horse is clearly frozen in stop time, even with Diego on top of it. Second, this idea is completely unfounded with everything we know about the world, since every other time it has made contact with a frozen being, they have not been conscious. When Dio moved Polnareff down the stairs, Polnareff obviously did not become aware of the time stop, he stayed frozen in place.